In this episode of Mighty Car Mods,
we're going to show you how to modify your car.
Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods.
So you've just got your hands on your first car or you've borrowed your mum's car and you are ready to do some mods. In this video, we're going to run through everything you need to know to get started in modifying your own car.
Now, why would you modify a car at all? Well, most cars are built to a price point from the factory and there's only so many things that they come with.
And the fact is, you can make your car faster and better or just personalize it because you want to make it your own. So let's dive into the Mighty Car Mods guide on how to modify your car.
Some people argue that cars are already perfectly fine from the factory and therefore shouldn't be changed at all. But it's important to remember that cars and their performance are often limited by factors such as emissions, marketability, noise, warranty, servicing intervals, and price. When combined, these factors can compromise a car's performance, and that's where modifying your car can unlock some potential, even if it is at the expense of warranty and servicing costs. By modifying your car, you can unlock some of the inherent engineering potential, learn about how your car works, and start making your car represent your idea of what makes it yours. Some cars are already impressive from the factory, and yours may be or it may not be, but you can definitely make your car better. So in this video, we're going to go through the complete beginner's process on how to modify your car. And the first thing you need to know is how to do a basic service and oil change. So that is step one.
So today we're going to be working on this BRZ that we just picked up secondhand. Now, every single time we get a secondhand car here on Mighty Car Mods, the first thing we do is give it a service. This means checking all of the fluids and changing the oil. So that is our first job.
Now, you should have already checked the oil when you bought the car, or before you bought the car, you should have already checked it. But changing the oil is super simple, easy to learn, especially on this engine where the oil filter's right there. So, what's it look like? Doesn't matter, we're going to change it anyway.
You can check the car's manual or this little sticker to see when the oil was last changed. Now, this one here says it was serviced by Subaru, but you can never be sure that what's on there or what is in the book is accurate. So when you grab your car, first thing to do, change the oil always.
The first step is to jack up your car and make sure it's securely on some jack stands. We're starting with an oil change. For this basic task, you'll need oil, a filter, sump plug washer, and an oil removal tool. Arguments about oil weights on the internet are endless and can vary depending on your climate and the use of your car. So do some research and make an informed decision about what's best for you and your kind of driving.
If you're in Australia, you can find out what kind of oils and fluids you need for your car by going to rego2oil.com. So you can type in your Rego, and here we've got Subaru BRZ, and then it'll list all the different oils and fluids that are suitable for your car.
Crack your oil cap so the oil can run out easily, then get under the car with some gloves and a drain pan and open the drain plug. Make sure the oil's not too hot, but if it's warm, it will run out easier. Then remove the oil filter. Clean up the area with a rag and then install your new filter until it's hand tight. Take off the old sump plug washer, replace it with a new one, and then you can reinstall the sump plug. Next, fill your engine back up with the specified amount of oil. Check the dipstick and remember once you start your car to check it again and top up as required. Clean your oil filler cap and you're all done. Remember to note down the date and mileage of when you did your service, as it's easy to forget. Labeling the oil filter is one way, or you can use a service label like this.
An often overlooked part of servicing is the element that filters the air coming into your car. These are really easy to change, and if you've got an older car, definitely have a look. It may not have been changed in decades.
The car has a whole lot of other fluids: gearbox oil, diff oil, coolant, power steering fluid, brake fluid. A lot of these things can be checked. You don't have to replace them as often as you do the oil. Always check the factory manual to find out what the service intervals are. And if you are asking more from the car, doing track days, stuff like that, you're going to have to make those intervals a bit shorter. Coolant's quite a big job to change. You can actually test it using coolant test strips, which is a really cool thing. Make sure the car is cold. Never do this with a car hot. It'll explode and it'll have a really, really bad time. Basically, you just get your coolant strip and you dip it the same way as you'd test a pool or a fish tank. Dip it in there. And this, after a few seconds, make sure there's no excess on there. And after a few seconds, this will tell you exactly the condition of your coolant.
don't forget to check the condition of all the other fluids in your car. Check the manual. It's also a good idea to check the condition of your spark plugs and replace them if required.
As part of our service, we're replacing the battery because this one's near the end of its life. Take the negative strap off first, then the positive, then remove the battery tie down and take the battery out of the car. When buying a new battery, check the code on the battery to help you find the right one. Make sure the terminals are right, and on newer cars, you may need to reprogram the ECU for the new battery. Once it's strapped down, attach the positive strap and then the negative terminal and you're done.
So the battery's in, the oil is done, the filter's done, and all of the fluids have been checked. And next up, it's time to talk air filter.
Now, you could just replace that with a factory replacement, but we're going to upgrade it, so we'll talk more about that when we get to modifying.
So now let's get into our first performance modification, people. We're talking wheels and tyres. When it comes to the performance of your car, the number one modification that you should do is better tyres and upgrade your wheels. Now, better tyres is not just about acceleration, it's also about better cornering speed and will also help you with braking as well. Now, factory wheels are often heavy, they don't look that great, particularly in this case of the BRZ, and getting an aftermarket wheel potentially is going to save you weight, plus get you a way better aggressive offset to make your car look rad.
Now, you can also just get better tyres for your factory wheels, but in our case, getting a slightly bigger wheel means it opens up more options for tyre sizes, which can mean more grip and more performance.
Wheels can and do transform the look of your car. A lot of what makes a wheel cool is rarity and fashion, but there's a few boxes you should try and tick before you get too excited, and that is getting the wheels to fit. The stud pattern, wheel width and offset are the most important factors. First, do some research as to what tyre and wheel combinations best fit your model car. There may be more than one ideal size, and this comes back to how much you're prepared to compromise. Incorrect wheel fit means scrubbing or wheel alignments that mean your car may handle worse than with your original stock skinny wheels. More rubber can mean more grip and traction, but there are limits on this too. Always buy wheels that tell you the width and offset. This is something you can measure with a ruler if it's not listed on the box of brand new ones. The internet has made finding the right wheels so much easier than it once was. We found some we liked online that are the most aggressive look you can fit with the widest tyre while not having to chop up your car to stop them scrubbing.
The wheels that I've chosen for the BRZ are some Wedz SA10Rs. These are a lightweight performance Japanese wheel. Now, Wedz have been making wheels since like the 1960s, originally as a supplier for Nissan. And these are kind of a concave design, but also lots of space at the back for when we upgrade the brakes at some point later in time. So these are an 18-inch wheel, so we're going from a 17 to an 18, and this is going to let us fit way wider tyres, which is the next modification we're about to talk about.
We decided to do some of our own tyre testing between a standard tyre on a professionally set up coilover suspension kit versus stock car with a street legal performance tyre. We used two identical Toyota 86s for the tests, and the result? The tyres alone were way faster than the suspension setup. This was demonstrated again when we ran our Yaris around a racetrack. With better tyres, we chopped 5 seconds off our lap time. To get an equivalent decrease in lap time with performance parts on our Yaris, we had to do a complete big block engine conversion, which was way more work and took way more time. The short version is that tyres are going to be the best bang for buck performance modification for your car.
In this case, we've got a Michelin Pilot Sport 4. It's 245, 35, 18. It'll fit those wheels really nicely. It's got really deep grooves in it. That's for wet weather driving. It's also got a silica compound that repels water, which is handy. And the belt in there is actually a hybrid of nylon and aramid, which aramid is like a military and space exploration grade synthetic fibre that's really strong. It's in bulletproof vests and all sorts of stuff. So these are going to work awesome on our wheels and give us excellent grip.
Unless you've got some fairly specialised tools in your home shed, you'll need to get your tyres installed by a specialist. The tyres are fan-dangled onto the wheels using a fitting machine and then inflated quickly, which seats the bead of the tyre onto the rim. A wheel balancing machine can spin the wheel up to speed and from this calculate where weights need to be added to make the wheels perfectly balanced. You'll notice the effect of this particularly at high speed. And with the tyres fitted to the wheels, we can bring them back and put them on the car.
With your wheels and tyres off, now is a really good time to inspect your brakes, and these ones here are looking fine. Now, some people have given advice about putting race pads on a street car, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because those kind of pads are only really effective when they're getting up to the temperatures that you'd expect on a racetrack, and they can make your street car squeal and actually be not as effective as a stock system. Now, later on, you can definitely get into upgrading your pads, your calipers, your rotors, and it's certainly something that with lots of our cars that we've made really fast, we've changed the whole system. It's definitely something you can look into, but for now, we're sticking with the stock system because you've also got to remember that a lot of your stopping power is not just the brakes, it's the tyres, and because we're upgrading to a more performance-oriented tyre, for this project, that is going to be everything we need.
When we're making cars that are considerably faster than stock, like our Mark 7 Golf R, which runs low 11s, it was really important to upgrade the whole brake system, including braided lines. If you are going to be turbocharging your car, supercharging it, or engine swapping it, don't skimp out on your brakes.
All right, that looks so much better. We only have one problem now, and that is that we are seriously failing the shoe test.
Oh, bad.
But offset looks great.
Yeah.
Colour looks good.
Yep.
Need to get some black wheel nuts.
Yep.
There's so much more tyre under there, that's amazing.
Heaps, 30mm more tyre. Massive.
All right, let's fix this. It's time to talk suspension. The next thing that most people want to do with their car is make it lower so it looks more hectic. Now, I can think of 4 ways that you can lower your car. The first is with a coilover setup. The second is using lowered springs. The third is using an angle grinder. And the fourth is just removing the suspension entirely. As you can see, that wasn't very comfortable. Today we're just going for a moderate drop, keeping it really simple. So we're putting in some lowered springs. These are some Eibach springs that they sent us for the BRZ. It should give us a fairly reasonable drop the whole way round. We'll use the factory shocks. Let's install them.
There's a huge variety of good aftermarket springs available, and while installing them is a little more tricky than just a basic service, it's rewarding in both looks and handling if you do it right. Some suspension designs are simpler than others, but in our coil-on-strut suspension setup, we need to compress the factory springs in order to remove the strut top. We can then fit our new springs, compress them and reinstall the strut top and put everything back into the car. Compressed springs can be dangerous, so as a minimum you'll need a set of spring compressors. Alternatively, remove your suspension, take it to a workshop, have them swap the springs and then put it all back together yourself. We'll need to get a wheel alignment afterwards as we're removing bolts that affect the overall geometry of the wheels and tyres in relation to the road.
Here is the factory shock. While it's out, it's a good idea to check it. You can do that by pushing down on it and making sure it springs back. A telltale sign if your shocks are wrecked is if there's any liquid sort of leaking out of them. That tells you that the seal inside there is blown. It's not too expensive to replace these. KYB make like a factory replacement one that can go straight on, that fit our new springs like that. These ones are good to reuse, which saves us a bit of money.
If at this stage you want to chase further handling improvements, it's a good time to consider using adjustable coilovers. They look similar to our factory setup, but you can customise ride height, springs, rebound rates and many other factors to fine-tune the handling of your car. Other suspension components like bushings and sway bars should also be considered, possibly before jumping straight into coilover suspension, to further improve how well your car sticks to the road. There's often a trade-off with noise, stiffness or vibration being more prominent, so choose carefully. When reinstalling your suspension, take note of any arrows or indicators of which direction the shock should face. Sometimes they only fit properly one way and you may not realise until the car is back on the ground. If you've gone for adjustable suspension, expect it to take a few goes to get it just right, as you'll need to put the car up again, adjust things and drop it back down.
With the lowered springs on factory shocks, we'll still have a compliant ride on the street, but a lower centre of gravity, reduced body roll and a much better looking stance with a drop of around an inch the whole way round.
Well, that looks awesome. A really, really good drop. Happy with that.
You can still get up driveways and over speed humps.
And the real question is though, oh, I don't fit anymore. I mean, I'm sure I could jam it in there, but
Nothing good ever comes doing that.
that's awesome. All right, suspension's done.
Tick.
Now, we move on to intakes and air filters. So the next thing to talk about is getting air into the engine, so we're talking intakes and performance air filters.
This is one of the easiest mods you can do on just about any vehicle.
It's also one of the most controversial though, because manufacturers make all sorts of claims about how much power you can make with your car. The problem is a lot of cars already come with a factory cold air intake and people remove it and install their own hot air intake.
Hot air makes you go slower generally, so you don't want to do that.
So we've done some testing on this to get our own results.
We've done numerous tests over the years with cold air intakes, pod filters and drop-in performance filters looking for power. We've tested multiple cars on dynos and the results are not that promising. With a naturally aspirated car, we lost power with a cheap pod filter and an expensive pod filter. With a turbocharged car, we had no gains with an expensive pod filter and no gains with an expensive panel filter.
Despite appearances, manufacturers do actually care about performance and how well the car performs. A whole bunch of engineers spend their lives chasing every last bit of horsepower. This intake has been designed properly. It gets cold air from the front, it's away from all the engine bay heat, and it's got a nice big air filter element in there, and then this bend that goes back and into the intake of the engine.
But everybody does love a bit of intake noise, so we're just doing a drop-in performance filter. Do we get 1 horsepower? Do we get 5 horsepowers? That is an argument for the internet to have, but it is going to give the car a bit of extra intake sound, which sounds good. So this is an Apexi air filter. We got this one from Japan, and we're going to put it in.
Another common modification here is an aftermarket intake system. They can be super expensive, but sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, so do some research for your kind of car. Unless you've got a really restrictive intake, it seems the most important thing here is to make sure you've got a clean filter. This one's clean, it's in, it's JDM, that's cool, so now let's move on to the exhaust system.
The next step on your modification to-do list is going to be the exhaust, not just for any performance that you may be able to unlock, but also for a visual benefit over the factory system and of course the noises.
Decisions would have been made at the factory balancing up emissions, cost, looks, noise, all these kind of things. We're going to push it in the direction that we want, which is performance. So we're going to install an aftermarket exhaust.
Exhaust systems are always a hot debate. Gains can be made, but the car often has to be tuned for it. We tested a bunch of muffler setups and made the most power with a potato inside a piece of pipe. Yes, a potato in a pipe.
There are heaps of options when it comes to aftermarket exhaust for your car, and it can be a very contentious subject. So do some Googling, have a look around. Ultrac sent us this catback system. It's cost effective, it should be easy to install, so let's go stick it on the car.
Exhaust systems can unlock big power gains, particularly on cars that have restrictive systems from the factory. You can do something as simple as just swapping a rear muffler, which may slightly improve flow, though swapping out the entire thing from the engine back will give you the biggest gains. The sky is the limit when choosing what material and what size system you want, especially with a car like this one with so many parts available. We've chosen a catback system as the headers and cat are some of the most expensive parts to replace, and a small performance benefit is a nice bonus along with a more exciting sound when you're driving.
If you disregard the flow characteristics of your aftermarket exhaust, one of the performance benefits could be that it's going to be way lighter than your factory system.
Spraying your exhaust hangers with WD-40 makes it heaps easier getting your old exhaust off and your new exhaust on.
This is a Ryobi ratchet wrench. Love this tool. There's some situations where it really comes into its own. When you don't have much room to get a spanner or a socket wrench in there, something with a motorized headlight, that's awesome, because you can just throw it straight on the bolt, hit the button, and you're done.
When you're installing your exhaust tips, you can use a flat edge like a can to make sure you get the angle exactly right with your bumper.
All right, so our exhaust is on, really simple install, bolted straight up. Time to have a listen. Fairly sedate, probably keeps it legal in most countries because there's still a resonator in there, but that's done. Now it's time to move on to body kit and aero, not really aero, but kind of.
By now, you've got wheels, tyres, and exhaust and intake, and your car's nicely serviced.
So next up, it's time to look at body kit. Now, there are so many options, from factory options made from the manufacturer all the way through to stuff that looks like robot vomit that you can buy on eBay. Lip kits are really easy to install. You see them on lots of different cars, from Euros to American cars to Japanese cars, and it should be a fairly easy install. If you don't want to do this, you can even do it yourself with garden edging. We've got a whole video on that. So Martin, let's get to it, mate.
How good a body kit looks when it's installed is usually dependent on how good the supplied hardware is. Some kits need lots of work to make them fit right, while some bolt on perfectly. Always check to make sure your kit comes with everything needed and doesn't need further customization unless you want to go down that road. It's possible to paint this particular version, but the polished plastic will suit our blue and black theme nicely as is. This kit uses mostly factory mounting points, which is also great because it's completely reversible.
The lip kit's on and the BRZ is starting to look rad.
Now, aesthetics is a real personal thing. What someone else likes, you might not, or vice versa. It's your car, do it how you want.
So this is the time that you want to start having a walk around your car, seeing what works for you and what doesn't. At this point, some people want to paint their mirror caps, some people want to do vinyl, some people want to do stickers, some people want to do tints, but you really just want to walk around and go, is there anything for you that's not working? Now for me, on this car, the rear tail lights I think look like garbage. Later on the BRZs, they actually replaced those and made them look a bit redder and a bit less whatever that looks like, which is terrible. The other thing is this reverse light here is just way too bright, so I kind of want to black that out a bit. So that's what I'm going to do, but have a full walk around your car, go what's working, what's not working.
I really don't like the lights on the back of this car, and it seems that Subaru probably didn't like them either, because in the more recent models they've updated them. Luckily there are lots of options available, so I'm swapping them out. With the rear lights done, I'm also changing out this light from the bottom part of the bumper bar. I'm putting in one that is blacked out to make it a bit more of a seamless look at the back of the car.
So the lights are in, I've pulled through all the excess cable. I'm just going to put a cable tie around that now. We sell our own Mighty Car Mods cable ties if you want to grab some. Once that's on, the rear of the car is done.
The lights are in and the back of the car is looking excellent. Now we're going to look into something that was absolutely massive in the 90s and the 2000s, and that is the sound system.
The last thing we're looking into in our beginners series is, of course, the entertainment in the car. Now, 10 or 20 years ago during the auto salon period, this was absolutely huge. You had people with Xboxes and PlayStations and stuff in the car. These days, most people just want a really nice stereo and some nice speakers.
The stuff that comes from the factory these days is actually already pretty good, but sometimes the head units are, again, built to a cost or a bit more simple. These days, you can upgrade them really cheaply and easily, and often the speakers that are in there will already sound mad.
If you're starting from absolutely nothing, there is so much scope with how far you can go with your car stereo, and you can do it for cheap. We made this whole ghetto system with a CD-ROM and subwoofer for $50, but hopefully you don't need to go that far. If you do need to change out your speakers and head unit, depending on your car, you might also want to look at adding some sound deadening. This does a great job of treating the inside of your car for a quieter and better acoustic environment for your epic sick tunes. Just remember though that this is adding weight, so if you're trying to make a lightweight track car, this is probably not the mod for you.
I'm going to upgrade the head unit on the BRZ because the one that was in there was a little bit old school. The previous owner had this iPod here with one of these old school chargers. I'm really keen to get CarPlay in there and get it up to scratch, so that is what we're going to put in.
A lot of manufacturers have moved towards entertainment systems that only fit that particular model of car and won't suit the standard single or doubled-in head units. Luckily, the aftermarket has come to the rescue here, and you can buy full dash replacement kits that allow you to upgrade your stereo to the latest and greatest. This means you can run CarPlay, Android Auto and other modern systems, and also have the flexibility to add extra speakers, amplifiers, subs and all that mad stuff. It's also possible to buy pre-made wiring kits that will just plug together quickly and easily. Although this is one of the best starting points to learn about how car electronics work, so don't be afraid of cracking out the soldering iron if you have to.
With everything done, make sure your insurance company covers your mods. All of our cars are insured with Shannon's Insurance, and they can increase your cover if you've added aftermarket parts.
Nice, no worries. Easy, I'll add that on your policy.
And with that, the Mighty Car Mods BRZ Stage 1 is complete.
All right, so our Stage 1 Beginners Mod BRZ is done. We're now getting the jack stands out. Now, if you have lowered your car at home, a really simple, easy thing you can make, we did a video about these, is these little stands here. Basically, it means that if your car's too low and you can't fit a jack under, it's just 3 bits of wood, bolt them up, stick a little bit of glue in there, and then when you lower the car down, the jack won't get stuck. Currently, it is too low with the lip and our lowering springs to get the jack out. That should fix it. That's it. I'm super pumped to see it. How you feeling, Martin?
I want to see it on its guts.
I also want to see it down low. It's looking epic. And that was a massive day. So you can do all of this, get a mate to give you a hand. This is about 1 day's work. So from this point, really, it is sky's the limit. Depending on what kind of car you got, you might be able to get a tune. You might want to be able to turbocharge it, engine swap it, but that is a very good base for our first mods and is looking freaking awesome. We do need to go and get a wheel alignment now as well.
Yeah, just because we pulled that front suspension apart, it's got camber and caster and toe adjustments, and we've got different size tyres, so it's a very good idea.
All right.
To make sure it still steers nicely.
Coming down. Yes. All right. I'm gonna roll it back, and we are done, people. We are done.
We were going for a really clean street car look, and I'm stoked with how it's turned out. If you're getting into modified cars, this is a solid foundation to start, but from here, it really is up to you how far you want to take it and what you want to do. Hopefully the most important thing is that you can feel proud that you're learning how to work on your own car yourself and how the car makes you feel when you drive it.
Regardless of what parts you decide to put on your particular car, the process that we've taken with this car is more or less the same. You can choose different wheels, different taillights, different interior bits, stereos, body kits, all that stuff.
Now this here is a great start, and most of these mods represent the way that most people modify their cars when they first start out. But you don't have to follow this exactly as we did, and you certainly don't need to follow those videos telling you the top 3 mods that you have to do. Do your own thing, make your car your own. Certainly in Japan, everybody loves making their car as unique as possible. Ultimately, it's you that has to drive the car every day and be proud of what you've done.
A car like this is a great base for further development as well. You can do all sorts of things to make it faster, engine swaps, turbo kits, supercharging, you can light it up, you can do all sorts of mad stuff.
And once you've learned about your car and you've learned how to service it, you can really hone in exactly what it is that you want to do to your car. Do you want to turn it into a drift car? That needs its own kind of modifications. A street car, a drag car, a race car, a track car, but this here is a really good basis for getting started. This here is kind of meant to be a daily drivable, comfortable car that can do some occasional track days. What you don't want to do is compromise your car to turn it into a track car that you use 1 day a year, and the other 364 days of the year it feels terrible. So we hope this video was helpful for you. We hope you've enjoyed this beginner's guide by Mighty Car Mods. And now, Martin, it's time to go for a cruise,
wheel
test
alignment.
out our mad new mods.
Wheel alignment.
And get a wheel alignment. Thanks for watching, everybody.